This is part 3 of the online lecture to accompany Chapter 13 in your textbook. I highly recommend you read Chapter 13 as there are many important ideas, theories, concepts, and examples that I don't have time to address in this lecture. You can stop, pause, and replay this recording as often as you wish. Okay, let's finish up Chapter 13. We've talked before about why extemporaneous speaking is the best way to deliver your speech. We also talked about what vocal variety is, the things that you do with your voice, and how you do that most effectively. The final part of this chapter has to do with what you do with everything else, your gestures, what you do with your body. Effective speakers learn to use their body to enhance the impact of their message. And it's very true that what you do with your body, where you stand, movement, that kind of thing, can play a major role in the outcome of a speech. The reason for that is because most of the time, if your nonverbal behavior is not in keeping with the words that you're saying to us, people tend to believe your nonverbal behavior over what it is that you're saying. So you want those two things to be in sync. So there's a couple of things you need to consider about your body and movement. So the first thing is your physical appearance. And you might think that it doesn't really matter what you look like, but indeed it does. When I talk about personal appearance, I'm not talking about how pretty you are or unattractive. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that the way you look needs to correspond with what it is that you're telling us. Let me give you an example. If the topic of your speech is how to interview for a job, and you come in to give your speech and you're wearing ripped jeans and you didn't comb your hair and you look like you just rolled out of bed, well, guess what? You're not going to be very credible because your personal appearance doesn't go along with what it is that you're trying to tell us. Now, that doesn't mean you have to wear a suit and tie to every speech that you give, because it's entirely possible that that might not be appropriate. If you're teaching us how to do yoga poses, then a suit and tie wouldn't work. So your personal appearance needs to be in keeping with what it is that you are talking about and the audience and the occasion. Also, your movement. Too many times when students get up to speak, their movements are born out of nervousness, and that's not what I mean. When I say movement, I mean deliberate movement where you move across the room to make a point, or you move over to the computer to change your slide, or something of that nature. Those movements are in keeping with the message. But walking back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, that eventually is going to give the audience the idea that maybe you're just doing that because you're full of nervous energy. So if you channel that energy into getting the idea across rather than just pacing up and down the entire time, that's going to be more effective. Does this mean you have to stand in one place for your entire speech? No. Your movement should be natural. It should be in keeping with the message you're trying to get across to us. Then you have gestures, and gestures are what you do with your hands and arms. And a lot of people don't know what to do. They'll stick their hands in their pockets or fold their arms, and neither one of those things is particularly effective. The best gestures are, again, in keeping with the ideas that you're trying to get across. Some people are naturally effusive. You've seen me lecture. I use my hands a lot. Other people, not so much. It really needs to be natural for you. But again, your gesture should not be born out of nervousness. So if you can't think of what to do with your hands, then just leave them at your side. And if you do that, then any gesture that you do will be natural. You can always hold your note cards in one hand. That'll give one hand something to do. But the other one should always be free to gesture. And when you gesture, don't just gesture because you think you need to move your hand. As I said, a gesture should be part of the communication process. So if you're pointing to things, if you're using your hand to explain yourself, those kinds of gestures are effective. And finally, eye contact. Now, a lot of students get very, very nervous about eye contact because they think that people are staring at them. So they don't want to look at them, and that way they won't know if the audience is looking back. But there's nothing like eye contact to make a connection with the audience. And since the audience, it should be the focus of your speech because that's who you're getting this information across to, you need to look at them. It's very necessary. Now, I don't mean by looking at them to stare at them. It's very disconcerting if someone is staring at you during a speech, whether it's them staring at you or you staring at them. And most people are not staring at you. They'll look away, you can look away, but try to catch everybody's eye in the room at least one time. There's nothing like good eye contact to help you relate to the audience. You can improve your speech delivery by following these 5 steps of practicing your delivery. Now, trust me, make sure that you give yourself enough time in the speech preparation process that you can spend some time practicing your delivery. Don't think you're just going to get up there and wing it, because that generally does not work for most people. So what is the process? Well, once you've completed your complete sentence outline, the preparation outline, that's pretty much your ideal speech, then start by reading it aloud. Don't just read it inside your head. You need to be able to say all those words out loud. Now, remember that in extemporaneous speaking, you're not just going to be reading it, but you need to know it well enough so that when you prepare your speaking notes, you can give yourself enough information to keep yourself on track. Then, once you've prepared your speaking notes based on your complete sentence outline, then you can start practicing your speech using your speaking notes. And should you get stuck and forget where you're at, you can always refer back to the complete sentence outline during the practice and say, oh, that's right, that's what I wanted to say, and then start over and try and move through that part that caught you up before. So say your speech aloud several times using your speaking notes until you can say it. And again, it's not going to be the same every time you say it. It's going to be slightly different, but that's fine, as long as you get the ideas across to us. That's the most important thing. And polishing and refining the delivery and incorporating whatever visual aids you're going to use at this point, and just making it as good as you can using your speaking notes and incorporating your visual aid into that. Now try to give a dress rehearsal under conditions as close to possible that you're going to face on the speech day. Now that's not always possible, but you can certainly place yourself and your computer in a place where you can stand. Maybe you can get some people to come in and watch you. Another good idea is to go to the communication lab and use their whisper room, and that way you can watch yourself, or you can record yourself on your iPhone. But whatever it is, don't assume that some cursory practice is going to do it. You really need to spend a decent amount of time practicing your delivery to be most effective. This is the end of the lecture for Chapter 13.